should lullaby.
Stealing Thunder aired around the time before No Time to Spy came out, which was in June of 2024, and since I wasn't really interested into the Loud Tale since I was burned out back then, and I was focusing on Summerpalooza 5 Steven Universe Marathon, it really took a while for me to look into this episode, but with an episode that just premiered today, this episode, despite having no connection when it comes to plot of that episode, it does show to me that it had a missed opportunity, and yet at the same time, that episode just shows to me that Lincoln can't really rely on his sisters even when they have screen time and have interactions with him. The season 9 episode that just premiered is Scene Stealer, and while this episode was leaked and I did watch it, it's fair for me to save this video for the episode's premiere right after, because I always feel like that it's mostly fair if people look into this episode, in my perspective, after the episode came out. Unlike me talking about Hologram Jam months before it comes out. The premise of Stealing Thunder is that there's a movie festival happening at Lincoln's school, and Lincoln and Clyde are doing a David Steele movie, and after Lynn Jr. manages to save Lincoln from getting hurt, this gave Lincoln the idea by having Lynn Jr. be his stunt double, but at the same time, the price is him doing Lynn Jr.'s homework. In Scene Stealer, Lincoln and Clyde cast Luann as the betrayer, and honestly, thinking about this episode being the only Loud House episode that has some resemblance of Lincoln bonding with one of his sisters, this episode just shows to me onto why Lincoln resorts on his friends for anything, to the point that while Lynn Jr. is more innocent compared to Luann, it just makes me think of what the outcome of Stealing Thunder would have been if Lincoln gave Lynn Jr. the credit of her being the stunt double. Truth be told, I saw reviews off of Stealing Thunder when it comes to Lincoln taking the glory over a stunt that he didn't do, and at some point, I totally agree with them, especially that they side with Chandler since he had a reason on exposing Lincoln. At the very least, the way that Lynn Jr. would have been portrayed if she actually got the credit, she would probably be the same as she was in Canes of the Con when it comes to not thinking about her brother, and I wish it wasn't the case if I actually watched this episode when it aired a year and a half ago. I always think that Stealing Thunder, after watching it from beginning to end, has always been the type of episode where it just showcases Lincoln being in the same position as Lori from Stroke of Luck, but the difference is that Lori actually told the truth to everyone at Fairway University, while Lincoln did not. After the stunt that he went through that wasn't as impressive as his sister. And truth be told, the fact that Lincoln shouldn't be defended due to him lying and the stunt that he did wasn't as impressive, I do admit that. But considering that this, along with the other episodes, are David Steele episodes, it really came to the conclusion that if this was something else like Whip Hardcore, Ace Savvy, or mainly the Our Ghost material, people would instantly go against Lincoln. Because they are seriously just trying to showcase David Steele as Lincoln's main hobby, and yet at the same time they didn't even bother to make it fair towards the main character. And after going through Scene Steele, honestly, if Lincoln actually got exposed and he wouldn't be able to make David Steele movies after that episode. Honestly, he would have avoided this, but if he still manages to do a movie with Luann still being the antagonist, he and Clyde will still go through unfair misery from her. And this is also, well, Luann's character just takes a huge dip compared to how she was in the earlier seasons, with her just wreaking havoc and just being too over the top to the point that it made her season 7 episode with Lincoln and Ryan another afterthought, since that she knew what she was doing. But in this episode, despite her goal of being part of the theater club, there was literally no excuse of her just tormenting Lincoln and Clyde off camera. Seriously. The times that Luann just throws honey material or just attack Lincoln and Clyde while acting as the betrayer, it's all off camera, not on camera. So this title is really false advertising, unlike in the other episodes. Scene Stealer isn't a terrible episode in my opinion, but it also shows onto why people didn't like Luann in the later seasons for how she's portrayed in this. And since that she was good in her solo episodes, the fact that this is the only episode in season 9 where it centers around Lincoln hanging out with his sisters in some other capacity, despite this being a Clinton McCloud episode, honestly, this just shows to me onto why Lincoln resorts on other characters rather than his sisters. And it's a shame because with him relying on Lynn in the other episodes, it makes sense for her to get the credit, and it made me see that that would have been a good Lincoln and Lynn episode if Lynn wasn't only being used at the beginning and only used her stunt double status against Lincoln. The fact that the synopsis has Lynn's name in it, you would think that she would contribute something, but apparently this is yet another missed opportunity like the other episodes while it's being overshadowed by something else. I mean, it's one thing that you only use Lynn to be Lincoln's stunt double, but the fact that you have her name in the synopsis, you would think that she would do more other than just being Lincoln's stunt double. But considering that what Lincoln did for Lynn when it comes to doing her homework and other projects, honestly, that's probably the biggest reason onto why the episode just drops her entirely and just puts most of the focus on Lincoln gaining the attention and the fact that he lied about doing the stunts. For me personally, the idea of Lincoln just resorting back to how he was when it comes to the status quo, ignoring what he's been through in the earlier seasons, mainly what would Lincoln do. I have to be real with you, the fact that this episode is putting Lincoln into the center of attention, even winning at the end, despite the fact that Chandler has a reason on exposing Lincoln, it's all because of David Steele. Like I've said before, if it was something else, Lincoln will probably get exposed. But since that these episodes don't even have any respect towards its fans, as in never listening to their fans on the issues of the episodes that they make, honestly, despite how badly executed this episode was when it comes to Lincoln winning, it's literally the only way that Lincoln is ever going to win or gain some kind of attention. Does he deserve the attention after doing the stunt? No. But I wouldn't lie if there wasn't another solution for him to get attention on his own. I mean, when it comes to Chandler in this episode, he's really the best when it comes to his motivations, but that's mainly because of the writing against Lincoln when it comes to him lying. And with him having every right to expose Lincoln on faking the stunts since that it was actually Lin Jr. who did the stunts. The fact that we don't even get an ending when it comes to Chandler just having an actual defeat, since that Lincoln's stunt is poor compared to Lin Jr.'s. Honestly, they probably didn't know how to give Chandler an ending of defeat compared to the other ending defeats that he had in other episodes. As much as I try to see why people side with Chandler 100%, for how that they handle his character when it comes to him having an actual reason of exposing Lincoln, they still would have done more with it, to the point that the ending that Chandler ended up getting is mainly him losing. And the fact that no one is ever going to find out that Lincoln wasn't the one who did the stunt, while he expresses that he's not going to be doing any more stunts. But I will say this though, Chandler is better than Luann in this episode, since that he actually knew how to handle the situation, while Luann really goes overboard. To the point that you can instantly see that what Lincoln and Clyde went through in this is so undeserved, to the point that Luann's motivation just feels too difficult to take into account when it comes to her character. Witnessing Luann in this episode, the fact that she is performing in character by any means necessary, even though that it's supposed to be something that people do when they're part of a theater class, it's still no excuse of her doing those things towards Lincoln and Clyde, because it's just a simple movie. It's just a simple David Steele movie that isn't as big compared to her theater class. And that's something I do admit when it comes to Luann's profession being superior over Lincoln's profession. However, that doesn't change the fact that she was the worst character in this episode for how she was written, and I wouldn't be surprised if what Lincoln went through in Stealing Thunder wouldn't be as bad as Luann in this, mainly on the fact that what she did is physical. Regardless of Lincoln lying about doing the stunts, what Luann did, she wasn't really thinking whatsoever when it comes to the safety of Lincoln and Clyde. And the more you think about it, the fact that she is so into character when it comes to the betrayer, it's difficult to enjoy her as the betrayer, judging of how that she is just too in character, to the point that her characters in the other theater shows were at least accurate, while in Lincoln's movie, when you're trying to get the illusion that it's less important than Luann's theater classes, you can still write her better than Lincoln when it comes to her experiences in theater classes. In fact, this would have been a good opportunity to showcase Luann's theater club's talents towards Lincoln on how to make a really great David Steele movie. But since it's not really the case, honestly, if Lola took the role of the betrayer, I wouldn't lie to say that she wouldn't do a better job than Luann. Because the fact that she can actually be in character but not too physically can say a lot on the fact that Lola is actually better than Luann in this episode. And the fact that Lin Jr. is better than Luann, since that she actually prevents Lincoln from getting hurt, just really says a lot that you really wanted to see moments between Lincoln and Lin like this, to while that you really want to see the good in Lin Jr., but with the idea of thinking that she would still get all the attention while being egotistical, which would probably put Lincoln in the same position like he was in Kings of the Con. Honestly, there's always a lose-lose situation for Lincoln, to the point that you really think that these types of ideas would have worked better if they didn't have to rely on the sisters being egotistical while receiving fame. This just makes it difficult for me to feel sympathy towards Lin Jr., but at the same time difficult to root against her, since that there are some instances that she does care about Lincoln, but due to poor writing in this episode, it's just really difficult to pick which side. I'm putting this all in perspective when it comes to Lincoln lying and the fame that he didn't deserve. I always think that if he actually come clean about what really happened, then I'm pretty sure that Lin Jr. would get the attention, but just not respecting Lincoln whatsoever. And even though that I really want to believe that the outcome could have been a lot more different, as in making Lin Jr. likable, honestly, the show isn't going to give potential on having Lincoln having better moments with his siblings due to them showing favoritism towards them than Lincoln. And this actually makes me understand onto why Lincoln and Clyde relied on Flip when it comes to doing the David Steele movies. He helped on the movie in the season 6 episode, which could mostly center around him giving flippies to them when it comes to an advertisement. And now in this episode, he is portrayed as the antagonist, and despite him flying a helicopter and the fact that it's a lot more dangerous than Luann, this actually made me more convinced that Flip is actually better than Luann, which is something I would say when it comes to his appearance and meaning in House Flip. Sometimes when a dangerous stunt is actually accurate than what Luann did, despite being less dangerous, I really wish that I wouldn't come to this conclusion, but I have. When Lincoln resorted on having a betrayal replacement, as in having Lucy, Lenny, Mr. Grouse, and even Tanya, who is Lenny's mannequin, as the betrayer, honestly, the last one is supposed to make them stupid, but at the same time, if they can't really rely on all those sisters, especially Lucy and Lenny, it really makes me to believe that him relying on Flip is literally the only solution, especially when it comes to him relying on his best friends. People have been arguing that they really wanted Lincoln to have more episodes centering around his siblings, but the less we see of that and the less misguided directions that we keep getting in these episodes, I really don't even know what is the right answer on having an actual good Lincoln and Sibling episode, especially a Lincoln and Luna episode. And this just makes Stealing Thunder aged a lot differently, mainly for Lincoln's favor in the position that he just can't be able to control of whenever he is attempting to control the situation. I always think that there should have been a better outcome when it comes to his relationships with Lin Jr. and Luann, but thinking about how Luann was portrayed in Scene Stealer, I can't even think that the other characters would act differently or better, judging of how that, with how simple Lincoln's David Steele movie was in Scene Stealer, they wouldn't even care about it, and the fact that they will probably care less after the events of No Time to Spy, honestly, it makes me see onto why Lincoln is so into David Steele, that with him being into spies and him just focusing on David Steele more, which led to him ignoring his sisters in Big Ball and Steele, I can see onto why his flaw of being oblivious is shown. Is it a problem? Yes, but with every context that I've witnessed from this episode and Scene Stealer, I can say for a fact that him being oblivious is really a showcase onto why that he was having thoughts of performing his other David Steele movie at Lois Place, when you always think that he's always into spy elements, while his sisters would probably care less about his profession. And with his profession on being a spy, which is most likely being unlikely, I can instantly say that there was literally no other way for Lincoln to have a good profession due to something happening to him, and it really feels like that the David Steely material is basically his plot armor. Even though I'm not on board with him being into spies, it just took a while for me to see onto why he's into it and why he relies on it a lot more than any of his hobbies. If anything, if he never had this hobby, I'm pretty sure that he would have gained nothing. As in, the other episodes that would have happened without David Seeley would have made him be more unlikable and really be more mistreated. I'm just saying, even if Lincoln lost in Stealing Thunder, he would probably still continue on with David Seeley because despite being an obsession, honestly, it's also his coping. Which is something that I can't say towards Luann when it comes to his pranking as she stated, her love language. If I actually think that that's also her coping, it also makes me to believe that Lincoln's coping of David Steely is better than Luann's. And at this point, thinking about Luann being a prankster and just having a great time is too difficult to take at face value due to this episode alone. Let's get into the endings of these two episodes. Chandler dares Lincoln to perform the stunt to prove to everyone that he really did it, and just when Lincoln was about to come clean, he slipped onto the side of the plane, which gave Flip the signal of starting the stunt itself, and Lincoln has no other choice but to perform the stunt, and he did it poorly, all the while not facing off the alligator unlike Lynn Jr. did. Despite being it poorly, he still gets praise from his classmates. Some say that he should have been exposed for not doing the stunt properly, and it does showcase of Lincoln being a coward unlike Lynn Jr., but with the amount of times that I've witnessed Lincoln doing heroic stuff, and when we see episodes like him being in this position, honestly, if Chandler was in Lincoln's position, he would probably have a more embarrassing impression compared to Lincoln. And the fact that Chandler actually bragged on doing something like that and his friend Trent stated that it happened at a playground, really, it just gave me more of a reason on to why Chandler going back at Lincoln when it comes to revenge, especially exposing him, feels shallow even though it shouldn't be shallow. Lori's ending may be better than Lincoln since that she did come clean, but truth be told, if they really wanted to continue David Steely movies in some of the capacity, they really had to make the ending the way it is in this episode. And when it comes to Chandler's defeat, honestly, it's for what it is. He may be better than Lincoln for some fans, but considering that Lincoln and Clyde got back at Lincoln by showing him an embarrassing video, which should have been the proof that Lincoln didn't do his stunts, I think it kind of shows that the classmates relying on Chandler is honestly non-existent if he actually succeeds. Like, I've seen this in the past, despite not knowing about the episodes, but just by witnessing this, Lincoln can still ride a pony or a horse more better than Chandler, so they really knew how to make Chandler more of a wimp than Lincoln in some of the capacity, despite how Lincoln was written in this episode. When it comes to Lincoln and Clyde's goal, they really want to get approval from the followers on the internet, with Wiki Picky being the biggest example that they really want approval from, with how the last David Steely movies were really that bad to him, and with them relying on Luann to be the antagonist, as they manage to succeed from getting Wiki Picky's approval, that's not how the episode ends. What this episode ends is Luann kicking Lincoln's door, interrupting his celebration with Clyde, and stated, Did someone say sequel while throwing her weapons of honey at them? And Lincoln and Clyde stated, victory is worth the pain. Honestly, if I think about this ending being better than how Lincoln was written in the final minutes of Stealing Thunder, I would have been into the sibling relationship of Lincoln and Luann, but since that doesn't work this way, honestly, this just shows to me that with Lincoln not giving credit towards Luann as the villain is honestly more accurate than Lincoln not giving credit towards Lynn when it comes to her doing the stunts. I guess it's no surprise that Stealing Thunder is the better episode over Scene Stealer, judging of how that episode really gave me a more different perspective of how Lincoln's sisters react, and possibly would have been, but also for the worse if the good didn't happen. I'm giving this episode, Stealing Thunder, a 7.5 out of 10, while Scene Stealer gets a 4.25 out of 10. At this point, I'm gonna be more afraid if we actually had an episode of Lincoln being paired up with his sisters, including Luna, which could lead to episodes like this when it comes to him and his sisters not connecting. Like, I don't even see any connection from Lincoln and Luann in this episode whatsoever, to the point that it didn't convince me that these two are really related. Hence onto why that once I talk about the shipping, you could agree with me or disagree with me, but all I can say is there's still despair in Loud Cess shipping with or without the healthier and appropriate ships of the Loud House. You're gonna be in for a wild ride once that romance and shipping video is finished and gets released for real.
You is the start of life for me.